Hello, I'm Matt Donnelly, and this is a special edition of the Fantasy Points Friday Night Hype Show. It's not Friday night, but it is Super Bowl week. We have the Kansas City Chiefs taking on the Philadelphia Eagles here in the Super Bowl. You get the best two teams in the National Football League, not just the teams you think are the best, the teams that were statistically the best all season long. Now, let's talk about the Super Bowl preview. Let's get into the tail of the tape. But before we get into that tail of the tape, how did these teams get here? The Chiefs, they got here with a victory over the Jacksonville Jaguars, 27-20, in which Patrick Mahomes, he'd go 22 of 30 for 195 yards and 2 touchdowns. He would then follow that up with a 23-20 victory over the Cincinnati Bengals, in which he would go 29 of 43 for 326 yards and 2 touchdowns. Redemption has never been so sweet in Kansas City. As for the Philadelphia Eagles, perhaps the easiest road to a Super Bowl that I can remember any team having in recent memory. Not because it was just an easy path, but because they were so dominant in doing so. It all started off against the New York Giants there, 38-7. And Jalen Hurts, he wasn't asked to do a whole lot, going just 16 of 24 for 154 yards, but he also had 2 touchdowns. Then against the San Francisco 49ers, 31-7, as Jalen Hurts, again, not asked to do a whole lot, would go 15 for 25 for 121 yards. These games, the Eagles, they had these things wrapped up by around halftime, give or take a little bit there. No doubt about it. At any point whatsoever. Now, the tail of the tape between the Chiefs and the Eagles. Now, this gets interesting because I mentioned these are the top 2 teams in the National Football League. The Chiefs, 16-3 this season. The Eagles, 16-3 this season. Points for 546 for the Chiefs. Guess what? 546 for the Eagles. Then you look at points against the Chiefs. They've surrendered 409 points this season, whereas the Eagles, they've only surrendered 358. Want to talk about pressure? How about 62 sacks this season for the Kansas City Chiefs? That's 7 in the playoffs. Meanwhile, man, the Philadelphia Eagles, 78 sacks this season. That's with 8 in the playoffs themselves. 3 interceptions for the Chiefs, 1 for the Eagles. 1 forced fumble for the Chiefs. How about 3 forced fumbles and 3 fumble recoveries for the Philadelphia Eagles? Both these teams, they each have 6 all-pro players on their roster. Both teams 5-0 against non-conference teams this season. Andy Reid, 3-0 versus the Chiefs as the head coach of the Eagles. He's also 3-0 against the Eagles as the head coach of the Chiefs. And yet, each team, they even have themselves a Kelce, if you haven't already heard that. Now, let's dive into the Chiefs' notes for this contest. Patrick Mahomes has to be on the top of his game this week. The soon-to-be NFL MVP will be facing an Eagles team that puts pressure on opposing quarterbacks like no other. And dealing with a sore ankle in 2 weeks to kind of heal, I don't know if that's enough time for him. That's a daunting task to ask anyone facing a team like the Eagles who can get after the quarterback. They have an impressive sack rate at 11.2%, which is the difference between their sack rate and Dallas. Dallas had 8.9%. So the difference between the Eagles 11.2 and the Dallas Cowboys 8.9 is the same difference as Dallas and the 23rd highest team as far as sack rate is concerned. That is how dominant this Eagles pass rush has been. Now, expect Jonathan Graham and that defense to continue to bring the pressure this week as they've done so, being able to get to the quarterback without blitzing because of how effective this defensive front can be. And they continue to stay fresh and do not lose anything by doing so. In the regular season, this Eagles front boasted 4 players with double-digit sacks, led by Hassan Reddick. We also had Javon Hargrave there, Brandon Graham, Josh Sweet, while totaling 318 pressures, which was the 5th most in the National Football League. Hassan Reddick, he hasn't even cooled off since the start of the season, recording 3.5 sacks in the 2 Eagles postseason games. Now, putting that into perspective, per Thomas Peterson there, Hassan Reddick, this season in 2022, among all pass rushers, first in forced turnovers with 8, second in sacks with 16, second in pass rush rim weight there at 28%, 6th in total pressures at 62. He didn't even get considered for the Defensive Player of the Year, not even a candidate. And don't even get me started on Brendan Graham not being a candidate for Comeback Player of the Year. 11 sacks, career high, 4th in pressure percentage there, and 4th in pass rush win rate. Mahomes, I'm sorry about it. You guys are going to have your work cut out for you. That offensive line for the Chiefs, it has to be in sync. This season, Mahomes has completed 107 of 208 passes while under pressure for 1,448 yards and a passer rating of 78.7 with 14 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. In the playoffs, he's taken his game to the next level, completing 17 of 26 passes for a 110.9 passer rating and 179 yards. Now, one of those reasons for success, especially in the playoffs, is having one of the premier pass catchers in Travis Kelce at your disposal. When looking at playoff numbers, I'm not even going to count the regular season here. We're talking playoffs. Now, Kelce, he sits only behind Jerry Rice when it comes to receiving yards with 1,467, receiving touchdowns with 15, and receptions with 127. I'm talking about pass catchers here, not just tight ends, pass catchers. Kelce has 8 career playoff games in which he's recorded at least 1 touchdown and 75 plus receiving yards. In fact, in the last 7 playoff contests, Kelce has at least 95 or more receiving yards and 8 touchdowns, scoring a touchdown in 6 of those 7 games. Now, once again, Kelce is going to be the focal point of this offense. There's no doubt about this. Everyone knows this. The Eagles know this. The fans know this. Everybody knows this. But Mecole Hardman, he is now on the IR, ending his season right there. Now, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, he was called up, so make of that what you will. But basically, after Mecole Hardman, you are left with a banged-up Juju Smith-Schuster. You're left with a Marquez Valdes-Scantling. You're left with a banged-up Kadarius Toney, who's basically been running on one wheel all season and one step away from blowing his hamstring, and the rookie Sky Moore as the only other viable passing options in this offense. Now, Kelce, he led the Chiefs in receiving in the playoffs, which comes to a surprise to nobody but Valdes-Scantling. 116-yard performance against the Bengals just a couple weeks ago. He caught 6 of 8 targets, and that, my friends, was a pleasant surprise. And it likely caught the eye of Darius Slay and James Bradbury. You want matchups? How about these inside the matchup type matchups here? The Eagles secondary, it is as tough as it comes. You know about that outside duo, Bradbury and Slay. But the return of Avonte Maddox last week there, it complicates things even further for Juju Smith-Schuster, which gives us Chauncey Gardner-Johnson there versus Travis Kelce. Maybe you throw in a little Kaiser White there if you will. But Gardner-Johnson led the NFL in interceptions this season while missing more than a few games along the way. If you are looking for a Super Bowl MVP dark horse, look no further than Gardner-Johnson, who has the opportunity to be the biggest difference maker in this game. Now, we saw the Eagles struggle at times this season when it came to stopping the run. They lost Jordan Davis for a period of time, and yes, that hurt. They also went out there and they added veterans like Linval Joseph and Ndamukong Suh basically right off the couch to try and rectify those concerns. But when the smoke and the dust, it all settled, the run defense, it still allowed 119.3 yards per contest, which was the 18th most. And they did allow Christian McCaffrey to average 5.6 yards per carry just a couple weeks ago. Now, Isaiah Pacheco, he has been averaging 5.6 yards per attempt in the playoffs. Then again, it's a rather small sample size, considering he's only ran the ball 11 times in those 2 games. In the regular season, though, Pacheco, he saw 170 attempts on the ground, and he managed to churn out 830 yards, which works out to roughly 4.9 yards per carry. If we assume that the Philadelphia Eagles are going to contain this passing offense for the Kansas City Chiefs, then we're also safe to assume that the Chiefs, they're going to need production to come from elsewhere, and that's where Pacheco steps up, especially on the ground. Now, Pacheco's season, it really didn't even start off until about week number 10, and from that date on, he has been impressive, ranking 3rd in the league in rushing yards with 754, 6th in yards after contact, on average of 3.7, and he's also 7th in total yards after contact with 469. If the Chiefs find some success running the ball, they're going to need to find a way to boost their passing game somehow, some way, and that is Jet McKinnon's job. And he's going to need to become more involved in the Super Bowl than he has been at any point during this postseason. During the regular season, McKinnon, he was 4th on the Chiefs when it came to receiving yards. He had 71 receptions to go along with 512 yards, and he was also becoming the primary read there in that red zone. Through 2 playoff contests, however, McKinnon has seen just 4 targets, resulting in 2 receptions for 17 yards. And we all know about how good this Philadelphia Eagles secondary is, especially when it comes to DVOA. On the other sideline, Jalen Hurts and company, they need to be aware where the big man, Chris Jones, is lining up at all times. Arguably the best interior defender this season. He has 2 sacks in 2 playoff contests after recording 15.5 sacks during the regular season. Behind the Eagles, it's the Chiefs as far as sacks are concerned, who had 55 during the regular season to go along with those 7 during the playoffs. We know Kansas City, they're going to move Jones around the formation, move him up and down the line as much as possible, but I cannot wait to watch Chris Jones versus Jason Kelce battle it out for interior superiority, as these are 2 of the best to ever do it. And they're going to go head-to-head right here under the biggest stage in the National Football League. Thanks to the Chiefs' ability to get pressure on the quarterback this season, they've been able to run man coverage on the back end more often than not, and they're doing so with 3 to 4 rookies at any given time. Now, call it learning on the job or whatever you will, but the Chiefs are allowing an 8.08 touchdown rate this season in man coverage. Jalen Hurts, he sits 5th in touchdown rate at 6.4% and 1st in yards per attempt when facing man coverage this season. And you know what? He's probably heard all the noise about Patrick Mahomes being the league MVP. Well, he can make a pretty good case for himself, maybe as the Super Bowl MVP with a good performance this weekend. Now, you know I love talking about the big man. Everyone loves talking about the big man. And this Eagles offensive unit, it is a unit in itself, and it is the best in the game today. And with Lane Johnson, they are even better than advertised. Johnson, he missed some time during the regular season, but during this playoff run, he has kept Hurts clean on 57 pass blocking snaps, neutralizing Nick Bosa just a couple weeks ago. And as good as Johnson and company are when it comes to passing situations, this unit, like most offensive line units, they love to run the ball, especially behind Johnson. 174 times this season, the Eagles have run behind the right tackle or bounced it outside for a league high 11 touchdowns and 982 yards. Philadelphia, they love to mix up their backs here. Miles Sanders to Kenneth Gainwell to Boston Scott. Throw in Jalen Hurts there, who is never shy of running the ball himself. And the Eagles, they are balanced in this run game, especially during the playoffs. Sanders, Hurts, Gainwell, they have all seen at least 20 rushing attempts in the first 2 games. In that NFC Championship, Miles Sanders, he would score twice on 11 attempts. There's been only 2 backs in NFC Championship history who have accomplished that feat. John Riggins back in 1983 and Emmitt Smith back in 1994. Now, Sanders, he is going to play a big role in this game. He is averaging 4.7 yards per carry during the playoffs, and this is coming off the back of a 1,269-yard performance this season on the ground with an average carry there coming in about 4.9 yards per attempt. The Chiefs' run defense, they've allowed the 8th fewest yards on the ground at 1,823 during the regular season. Then again, the 49ers, they were ranked 2nd, and the Eagles, they went out there and ran the ball 44 times for 148 yards in that NFC Championship game. Now, I mentioned rookies on the back end of this Chiefs defense, and that is one area that A.J. Brown and DeVonta Smith, they can attack. I can't even imagine Kansas City and how they're going to task a rookie one-on-one with A.J. Brown. So they're going to be asking L'Jarius Sneed to step up on Brown a majority of this contest, basically due to his size. And, hey, it's hard to defend a guy named Swole Batman. Now, that leaves Trent McDuffie, Joshua Williams, and Jalen Watson to attempt to cover Skinny Batman. Now, this Eagles dynamic duel, it'll look to take a further advantage of the secondary that has surrendered the most passing touchdowns in the NFL during the regular season. Kansas City, they allowed 33 of them. That's 4 more than the next closest team. Sneed, he's going to be asked to abandon his regular coverage assignments in order to create pressure off the edge to kind of add a little bit of that additional run support there. In doing so, if Hurts picks this up, this could lead to a big day for one of the best receivers in the league when it comes to yards after the catch. As A.J. Brown, he had 548 yards after the catch this season. Now, Smith, he led this Eagles team with 95 receptions this season, while Brown, he led the team in yards at 1,496, along with those 11 touchdowns. Smith and Brown were one of 4 receiving duos this season to each surpass 1,000 yards receiving, and neither has really needed to do a whole heck of a lot at this point on this Super Bowl run. As a matter of fact, the Eagles, they do not have a single 100-yard pass catcher through 2 playoff games. Smith, he has just 97 yards in those 2 contests, while Dallas Goedert's added 81, and A.J. Brown only has 50 yards receiving. They sit 2nd and 3rd on the team. That all said, we all love the deep ball. Brown has an ADOT of 12.01, while his running mate, DeVonta Smith, has an ADOT of 9.67. What's that mean? It means a team like the Chiefs that has allowed a 96.2 passer rating and 847 yards and 6 touchdowns on deep throws is going to need to come up with a solution rather quickly. I'd love to believe that Dallas Goedert is going to be a huge factor in this contest, and you know what? He very well could be. But the truth of the matter is the Chiefs have 2 of the best coverage linebackers in the National Football League in Willie Gay and Nick Bolton, who are partially responsible to holding tight ends this season to 12.67 fantasy points per game over the regular season. Now, we know that they can cover, but we also know that they can tackle, as evidenced by Bolton's 102 tackles this season. Philadelphia will need to eliminate both these Chiefs linebackers in the run game for it to be successful there. Bolton and Gay will need to rely on their speed to quickly identify where the ball is, where the ball carrier is, and get there before that Eagles offensive line can get a chance to reach them on the second level. Bolton and Gay win, it's a tackle in the backfield for a loss. If the Eagles big men win, it's a big gain and a long day for this Chiefs defense. And there you have it. That is your Super Bowl preview. And just going to throw this out here one more time. Fantasy points, 30% off. Early bird special ends on Super Bowl Sunday. So do not miss your chance at huge savings for 2023. That's John Hansen's rankings. You get props and betting advice from Tom Brolley, Dank stats from Scott Barrett, Graham Barfield's data-driven analysis, and much, much more. And make sure to keep this tuned in here on this YouTube channel here. Check out Brian Drake, Joe Dolan, and the 2-point stance right here on the Fantasy Points YouTube channel. I'm Matt Donnelly, and I'll see you in the offseason.